Hi, Scorpio. Welcome to your 2019 astrological overview. I'm Raina, and I wanted to give you a big picture perspective by focusing on some of the slower moving transits. And some of these you've already had in 2018 and even earlier, much earlier. But I think putting it all together with some of the newer arrivals like Jupiter in Sagittarius and the North Node in Cancer can kind of give you a fresh perspective. And I'm also going to be discussing the solar and lunar eclipses of 2019 as well. You can check out my monthly astrology forecasts on my channel, and because I do them every month, and I get into all the stuff that's happening for that particular month. But I wanted to differentiate between those and this type of reading, so that's why I'm doing it this way. And the other thing I want to tell you that this is for Scorpio, Sun, and Rising, just in case that wasn't clear. And this is a general forecast. And if you would like a personalized forecast with your natal chart, if you have your time of birth, that is, you can check me out. I have a link to my special that is through the last day of 2018. That's 20% off my natal chart interpretation reading, which is an hour-long reading. So that's below. And so what I'm going to talk about first for 2019 is your third house, because there's a lot happening there, and that's one of the themes I see of 2019, because we have the South Node recently having joined the party here, and we're going to have a lunar eclipse here. So the third house is the house of learning, as well. It can be teaching, especially if it's up to high school, I believe, through high school. But the opposite house, the ninth house, is the house of university level learning and kind of what we call the higher mind. So I guess we could call this the lower mind, but it's not in a bad way. It's actually the house of, to me, knowledge versus the ninth house of wisdom, okay? And so I call it mundane knowledge. And so, the weird thing about it is you could say that the ninth house is also a house of mundane knowledge, because when you go to a university, you're still getting worldly knowledge, aren't you? But it's just more sophisticated. So maybe that's totally wrong of me to say that. But I'm going to say that the ninth house is about philosophy and, religious beliefs. And since the third house is connected to Gemini and its ruler Mercury, it's about information. I would say like information that is disposable, that's kind of like timely things, but not necessarily permanent things. So the news, journalism, the media, gossip, and things of that nature. And so for you to have all these influences in the third house of Gemini, Scorpio, this is quite interesting, because in the first place, the planets that are there, we have Pluto having been there for the last 10 years. And this is an example of, I'm making this statement, but it might not be true for you specifically, based on your personal degree of sun or rising in Scorpio. But 10 years is a long time, and Pluto is one of your rulers. And in the third house, I should say too that the third house can be your neighborhood, it can be your neighbors, your siblings, and that could be a big one. Pluto in the third house may be that you do not want to deal with your siblings in a superficial way anymore. And so it's like digging beneath the surface. And perhaps if you have had any kind of, repressed memories of things that they did, of things that you experienced as children, and you talk about them, that can be quite profound and life-altering for you, because that's ultimately the job of Pluto, is to regenerate people in whatever house it's in. So regenerate your relationships with your siblings and make them less frivolous and more impactful. And so you might be bearing your soul to your siblings, or they with you, and you come to a totally new understanding of who they are. Whereas before you may have just kind of been very trivial and dealt with trivial matters, because that can be the third house, can be kind of trivialities. And now you're really focusing on things that are important and impactful. And actually, it's interesting because just your speech may become that much more, your communication may become more intense. But I'm talking to Scorpios, and your Mercury may be in Scorpio in your natal chart. So how much more intense can you get, right? But I can see some Scorpios who have always fancied themselves writers who may be like intense or obsessed, because Pluto can be obsessed about writing this masterpiece work. And it's like it consumes you. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be everybody. This is only going to be people who actually feel like they are writers. And let me see. So there's that. And then you have Saturn in this house. And Saturn's been there a while too, although not 10 years. Saturn's been there since December 20th of 2017 in that third house. And that can be a time when you are in the next couple of years, because you're going to have it here for probably about 2 more years. I don't know exactly when it stops, but you're going to have it throughout the whole year of 2019 for sure. And Saturn in the third house can help you to organize yourself in the area of learning and setting down foundations. But the third house, as opposed to university learning, if you're an adult, could be about certification. So perhaps if you are a teacher in the third house, like could be an elementary school teacher, you may get different endorsements in the next couple of years. And these endorsements, it's not just about getting a raise. It could be about something 10 years down the line when the school district is going through a purge and you are the one who has multiple certifications and you survive the purge because you have more flexibility with your, credentials. And so things along this nature. Saturn is looking at the long haul. Saturn is not just for a quick gain. So preparing for your future in the area of education is definitely what is the name of the game here for the next couple of years with Saturn. And it can mean some kind of duty that you feel towards siblings. So maybe you're in your 20s and you end up allowing a younger sibling to live with you because one or both of your parents cannot take care of him or her. And that does happen sometimes. Even when the adult is quite young, they may have underage siblings who need a stable home, and they take them into their home when they have already left the family home. So that could be something that comes up for you in the next couple of years with Saturn. But definitely, I think anything to do with a writing project, a choice of career. I mean, this could be if you're working in the media, for instance, and these transits are upon you, you may decide, like with Pluto there, if you're a journalist, to go into the crime profession, or maybe as a writer, become a mystery writer, or just what scorpionic, Plutonian types of subject matters. So a journalist who maybe was in the gossip or TMZ type of an area may go into true crime reporting or investigative reporting. There you go. That's the one. And how much of that exists nowadays? We don't have. We need that. We need people that are willing to expose things. We don't. We have that. Oh, here's the thing. I was going to say citizen journalism, because that's a big thing nowadays. And I think the reason that it has become so big is because of the internet, obviously, but because there's such a lack of it in our society, where the news organizations are going along with certain agendas to satisfy their corporate overlords or other entities. And so people off the street are beginning to just dig into things themselves that are hidden. And, you talk about Pluto, it could be even like conspiracy theories, well, what they call conspiracy theories. So you could be a citizen journalist on YouTube, and actually the third house can be associated with the internet too, because it is a medium that we use in order to communicate these days, and is part of the media itself. So so very interesting. And then let's talk about the South Node here. So the North Node went into Cancer in the first week of November of this year. And that means that the South Node went into the opposite sign in the opposite house. So before I talk about the South Node, let me talk about the North Node. The North Node in Cancer is in that 9th house for you. And this is a house where you actually had a solar eclipse in July in this 9th house. And that was kind of the preview of the eclipse cycle that is starting now, because we just are getting through this Leo Aquarius set of eclipses, and now we're having Cancer Capricorn, and so that's affecting the axis of your 3rd and 9th houses. And so with the North Node transiting the 9th house, you may experience expansive things, Scorpio, that are really part of your soul's unfoldment or unfolding in this lifetime, okay? And I have mentioned with the other signs that my theory is that life is a combination of fate and free will, but that even the fate that seems like fate is actually free will too, but it was decided before you were born, which is a little bit out there. And I have referred people to a book by Michael Newton called Journey of Souls, which kind of goes into this. He hypnotized people, and they told him what they do between lifetimes. And, it even went down to being in a room, or, the equivalent of a room. That's the way you describe it. And the big screen, and deciding what kind of lifetime you're going to have, and plotting these points, and maybe even deciding what kind of body you're going to have. So when you come into this lifetime, you have a certain body. We can call that fate, because certain bodies are born blind, or born with some kind of other physical challenge. And there are certain things that are limited because of these challenges. And we call that fate. And then we have free will. Every day we make choices. these choices are not all predetermined if we buy a certain brand of toilet paper. But so anyway, the transiting North Node, as well as your natal North Node, can indicate certain things that are destined for you. But especially with the transiting North Node, this is like as your life is unfolding in this incarnation, different important events that occur that kind of like influence your path. So in the next 18 months, you're experiencing this in your 9th house of the higher mind, the God house, and long distance travel. So it's very possible, Scorpio, that you will take a trip that changes your perspective. That's what the 9th house is all about. It's about expansion. It's a house that Jupiter rules. So anything that allows you to see things from a different viewpoint or a bigger, wider viewpoint is indicated during the next year and a half. And also for people going to university. So whether this is your first you go around at that rodeo or if you're going back later on, it can have an expansive influence. I mean, that was always the purpose of going to college, was to expand one's mind. I don't think that originally it was all about getting this well-paying job. It was really about this idea that we enhance our lives by being able to nourish our minds with a lot of ideas that are at a higher level. And it's called higher order learning, which involves us thinking for ourselves. And of course, some of that has changed, but you can still go to college, I believe, especially if you're studying certain things, and still feel that sense of nourishment and expansion. And this is especially true with the liberal arts because, they tend to involve a lot of ideas that you can play around with. And actually, that's what I have a degree in. And people kind of make fun of liberal arts degrees because they go, oh, what are you going to do with it? Well, sometimes you don't have to do anything. You just be, So anyway, that may be something that is really coming in for you. And because it is, the North Node transit and the South Node are attached to the eclipses, it could be opportunities that come before you that you were not even actively pursuing. So that's what I want to prepare you for, because Scorpio's a fixed sign and you may have a certain rigidity, especially if Mercury is in Scorpio, about what it is that you want to do in your future, maybe in the next year, the next 5 years. And if something presents itself out of the blue, you may distrust it. Well, if I tell you this in advance, then you may be more receptive to it. So that's really what I think astrology is about, is kind of giving us a little bit of signs and symbols along the way, but not telling us everything. Still allowing us to make our own choices in the matter. And so, as there is the solar eclipse, as there is the North Node, there's the South Node. The South Node is in Capricorn, transiting through that 3rd house with those other heavy influences. And the South Node is your karmic past. By the way, I hope that this recording doesn't sound too choppy, but it appears that where I live, it's under a flight pattern very heavily right now. And so I'm like stopping and starting. It seems like every 5 minutes or 2 minutes. And it gets a little bit old, but I don't want to put it on the recording. But yeah, so the South Node is your karmic past, and it's not anything, oh, it's bad or anything like that. It means that you've already been there, done that. And so you may fall back on certain things because there's a comfort attached to them, because you're good at it. You've done it. You've practiced it. So with the third house, you may be the kind of person who has, perhaps you've taught elementary school for 20 years, but you've always had a dream of being a college professor, but it's scary to you because it involves a whole other skill set and you don't know if you have the chops. Well, you may cling to the known quantity, but this may be prompting you to take that chance, Scorpio, and to put yourself, to challenge yourself, and that it could change your life. And it's just like old patterns with that South Node that you should look at, and I think Pluto is going to make you look at them, but also transcend them and kind of use the North Node influence as your guidepost. And actually another thing too along these lines is that you may find that there are opportunities to travel abroad, and you may be kind of the person that isn't crazy about travel, or it just is something that you have to really talk yourself into, because especially now having that South Node in that third house, it's kind of like it's worn out its welcome. And maybe it's even a job offer overseas. And it feels daunting, but it's the right time because this is what the universe has in store for you. But I would always say that ultimately you have to go with your feelings, because if I felt very uncomfortable about something, I don't give a damn if my North Node is in a certain house. I'm not going to do it. If it's in the 9th house and I don't want to travel, then I'm not going to do it. I'm going to honor my intuition, because that's just, I don't believe in doing something that you are adamantly opposed to either. So there's that. And let's see what else is happening. Well, there's going to be a solar eclipse in this 9th house on July 2nd of 2019 at 10 degrees of Cancer. So that could be the time when you see after this point, or even sometimes it can be before that actual date, where you see multiple opportunities present themselves for you in this area, whether it's of academia or travel or some kind of spiritual, religious activity or studies that present yourself, and that is something that is, the universe nudging you in a certain direction. And a couple weeks after that, on July 16th, we have a lunar eclipse in the 3rd house of communication, 24 degrees of Capricorn. So this could be a very profound insight that you have about the learning process itself. Maybe you're ending a book that you've written or coming up with a great idea for a novel. It could be ending things with siblings, or maybe this is when you leave for a trip. I mean, leave to move even. And you're just done with this one area that perhaps you've lived in for many years. So, so that's what I have for you about those houses. And I'm going to talk a little bit. It's funny. I said I was done with those houses, but actually the year begins with a solar eclipse in that 3rd house in Capricorn, 15 degrees of Capricorn. So I just mentioned the lunar eclipse where you have a solar eclipse there. And so in the 3rd house, solar eclipse could be a new opportunities in teaching and learning for you. Maybe a certification course that you're going to be beginning, maybe some kind of teaching assignment. And if you are a teacher, Scorpio, I think that you're going to gravitate towards situations where students need you for more than just the classroom, where you feel this strong sense that you're healing them in some way. So underserved communities comes to mind. And you want to transform their lives. Maybe they live in communities that are low income, and there are a lot of social issues associated with the area that they live in, and you want to show them that there's more to life than that area. And I think that's a perfect way of characterizing Pluto transiting that third house, that you can transcend your physical environment, and you can empower yourself in spite of wherever it is that you live. And so that's happening. Maybe you're starting a new writing assignment or some kind of novel. And what's great about the solar eclipse is that it's happening right after the new year, when we already feel kind of like a clean slate. And we feel the very next day, Uranus goes direct in Aries, and this is your 6th house of work and health. And that's going to mark about a 2-month period with no planets retrograding, whether it's personal or outer. And that, I remember when that happened before, and it does feel like a green light, because we do have so much start and stop lately for the last year. As I record this, it's a Mercury retrograde. So a couple of weeks after that, we have a lunar eclipse, and this is at 0 degrees of Leo, so that's the last of the Leo Aquarius eclipses, and this is going to be in your 10th house of career. That could be a very good one, where you do get this, what do they call that? I was going to say a raise. I mean, it could be a raise, but I was thinking of a promotion, but that it's just kind of like a really big promotion. Or if you're somebody in the arts where it's something that is you become famous or something. I'm being slightly facetious, but it could happen when the moon is full moon in the 10th house could be fame. But in any case, recognition. But sometimes it could be like an abrupt ending to a career for whatever reason. Maybe you have decided that you're going to do something internet-based with the third house. Or for instance, let's say you're an elementary school teacher and you decide that you're going to work from home and do some kind of teaching on the internet. And you're not going to work in a classroom anymore. And you just leave that type of profession that's actually dealing with students in a classroom. And it comes through some sudden opportunity that presents itself earlier in the month due to that solar eclipse. So it doesn't have to be bad, even if it's an ending. It could just be things happening suddenly that you have to kind of jump on sometimes. So let me just say, I should say very quickly about that Uranus going direct on the 6th after that solar eclipse the very next day at 28 degrees of Aries. This is in your 6th house of health and work. So you have experienced Scorpio, Uranus in your 6th house for the past 7 years, and this will be the last of it. And in March, and that is March 6th to be exact, Uranus will go back into Taurus, where it briefly was earlier in the year. And so it's going to go back into Taurus, and that's your 7th house of committed partnership. I'll get to that in a minute, but talking about from January until March to have Uranus in the 6th house means that it is possible that there will be some kind of sudden like shift in direction of how you are working, because with that lunar eclipse in the 10th house, I mean, that's the same time when you have Uranus in the 6th house. So this could be all on you, that you decide that this is something that you want to do because you feel called to change gears in a very dramatic way. But it could also point to a few more months of instability in working, where you have maybe kind of short assignments, maybe you've been doing contract work and that sort of thing, and not working for one company continuously. And that might have been the story for you for the past 7 years. It is going to settle down after that March 6th period, but I just wanted to bring this up in case this influence continues for you for a little bit. This could also be about hinting at the direction you're going in. Maybe you want to work in the intuitive arts. Maybe you want to become an energy healer. And Uranus in the 6th house can be about healing through unconventional means, especially, I think, through intuitive types of energy work, like Reiki and shamanic healing, and even doing some kind of, mental, like telepathic kinds of things that connect to a profession, astrology even. I mean, I could see that maybe you're studying that, and that's something that you want to do as a career at some point. But on March 6th, you have Uranus going into that 7th house, your opposite sign of Taurus, and this will be for the next 7 years. And so if you're married, this could point to a lot of unusual things happening. Maybe you decide that you want to open up your marriage. I know I'm going to get some Scorpio people that say, no way, I'm not going to do that. But this is not going to be every Scorpio, obviously, who's married. But Uranus is about being unconventional, desiring total freedom, being a nonconformist, so not doing what everybody else is doing when it comes to how they live their life. So an example of this can be being a nonconformist as a married couple, where you may say, hey, just because we're married doesn't mean we can't be with other people as long as we're open with each other about it. You might think of it like that. Or it could be a case where you decide that you want to live one place and your partner wants to live another place, and you're still married, but you want to have your own living quarters, or, I don't know. But the other thing too is you may just decide that you want to be free from the commitment of marriage. Maybe this is a time you get divorced, but it's not bad because you are craving freedom. And Scorpio usually craves that, soul absorption, with another person. But perhaps you are getting into some kind of a phase that you are itching for your freedom. And so you have to realize, it could even be that you get involved with somebody very seriously who is an Aquarius. And Aquarius is a fixed sign like you, so that's always a possibility, although it is quite an odd couple on the face of things because of the very, very different way that you look at relationships and life. So that is that. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Jupiter in Sagittarius. Woo! Because this is your second house of earned income. So cha-ching, right? this expands maybe your income streams. Maybe you decide, I'm not going to put all my eggs into one basket. I'm going to maybe start my own business on the side and do something that feels like I can count on it, even if I end a different job, that I never have to worry that I'll never have other money coming in, or because I just want to. I just am feeling more positive, which can be the influence of Jupiter and Sagittarius, in the area of finances. I don't feel as fear-based. I feel more optimistic that things are going to really, that I'm going to be lucky with money in the upcoming year. And I think that that certainly will be the case. I will say that Jupiter will be going into Capricorn in, I think, December 2nd of 2019. So I wanted to slip that in because then that's going to be your third house. But let's just focus on the second house, which is also the house of self-esteem. You may feel better about yourself, and this may uplift you, and also get some kind of lucky break when it comes to some financial situation, maybe lucking into a certain way to make money that feels, gives you that sense of expansion, maybe even like freedom. Where, see, that's what I'm thinking too, is that perhaps some of you are going to be working from the internet so that you don't have a lot of things holding you back during the day, where you can just kind of have your schedule the way you want it, okay? And you get to call the shots. So that could also be, because I was just reading something. I always thought that the sixth house was the house of the daily schedule. And then I thought I read something about the third house. So if that's the case, then that could totally go along with kind of working from home and working from the internet and doing things like that. So anyway, Scorpio, I'm going to leave it there. And I hope that you have a wonderful 2019. Take care. Bye.